wondering how I got into this mix.
Hello everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. Today we're going to talk about animal consciousness. So let's get right to it. Let's look at this story here from the Washington Post. A judge just raised deep questions about chimpanzees' legal rights. For several years, an animal rights organization has sought to convince New York courts that chimpanzees kept by private owners are, quote, legal persons with a right to be free. For several years now, the courts have rejected this claim. New York's highest court did the same this week, denying an appeal of a lower court's refusal to grant a writ of habeas corpus to two caged chimps named Tommy and Kiko. But in a striking concurring opinion, so basically the lower court, or the appeals court, agreed with a previous court saying we're not going to grant them a writ of habeas corpus, which means that they should be given, a trial or in order to find them to be basically non-human animals. But the one judge who kind of wrote an opinion, he did make note of the fact that this trial, this claim brings up some interesting points. Namely, the judge wrote, Eugene Fahey wrote, does an intelligent non-human animal who thinks and plans and appreciates life as human beings have the right to protection of the law against arbitrary cruelties and enforced detentions visited on him or her? This is not merely a definitional question, but a deep dilemma of ethics and policy that demands our attention. Still, the 5-0 vote upheld a June decision by a lower appeals court which ruled that chimpanzees could not be legal persons because they cannot take on legal duties. The Non-Human Rights Project, which has asked courts to move Tommy and Kiko to a sanctuary, says the interpretation is flawed. Stephen Wise, the group's director, said in interviews that infants or comatose people possess the rights despite an inability to assume legal duties, and that primate experts say chimps have rights and responsibilities within groups and in settings with humans. So the basic argument here is one that I have made for some time about animals, which is that in, let's say, polite society, we understand that children and maybe elderly people who can't fully take care of themselves, maybe they're not legally able to take care of themselves, right? Maybe they need a caretaker. A child isn't emotionally mature enough or experienced enough to know how to handle certain situations. So they need a caretaker, a guide, an adult, a parent, and same thing for a person who gets a bit older and can't take care of themselves. Still, despite that, we don't think of children or old people as property simply because they can't fully take care of themselves. Because that's the argument some people make, is like, look, animal can't reason, an animal can't think, right? Or animals don't feel pain, this sort of silly, long debunked one. But the idea here is that generally animals are less than humans, and so they shouldn't be granted the same rights. So it says, even as he voted with the majority, Fahey appeared to be gripped by the issue and determined not to let the latest ruling close the door. The lower court's conclusion that a chimpanzee cannot be considered a person is not entitled to habeas relief is in fact based on nothing more than the premise that a chimpanzee is not a member of the human species, he wrote in his opinion. In elevating our species, we should not lower the status of other highly intelligent species. So that's really interesting, because what he's arguing against there is what many people know as carnism. And carnism is the belief or the philosophy, the ideology that, well, for one, that carnivores are, I guess, predominant, and really it's like a human-centric view of things because they are willing to eat other animals and just see other life as essentially just here to be dominated by mankind. And I think that's a very flawed way of looking at the world. Now, the article goes on to say, instead of focusing on whether chimpanzees are persons or bear legal duties, courts should grapple with whether the animals have a right to be free, the judge wrote. So this is what he said is the real matter. Do animals have a right to be free? And I definitely think this is the angle we should take it from, because it's more of a moral issue. It's not a legal issue or these sort of things. It's morally, don't animals deserve the right to live freely and to thrive amongst their communities and however they choose to? I think it gets into some bigger topics here. That's why we're exploring this. He also continued, they are autonomous, intelligent creatures. To solve this dilemma, we have to recognize its complexity and confront it. The issue, he continued, speaks to our relationship with all the life around us. Ultimately, we will not be able to ignore it. While it may be arguable that a chimpanzee is not a person, there is no doubt that it is not merely a thing, which means they're not merely just property, possessions for people to just use and abuse as they please. this is a living, breathing creature. And monkeys, they get more respect from some humans because they're very human-like, but it should go beyond that. Now I want to couple that story with this one here, that study shows animals can replay past from their memory. Researchers on Thursday reported the first evidence that animals can mentally replay past events from memory, a discovery that could aid the development of new drugs to treat Alzheimer's disease. Now immediately I have a problem with this article because it's not really the person writing it. This is just our culture, our society, right? So they're testing on animals. That's my first thought, is like, oh God, what are they doing to some poor animals in order to discover that they can memorize things and remember things? And how are they going to exploit this animal now? Because as I said, it's going to be used to treat Alzheimer's disease. So they're using these rats and they're testing them, and this could be for a good thing. I know some people argue that animal testing has saved lives and that we wouldn't make it here without animal testing, but there's a lot of things in the past that we did to get to this point as a species. We don't have to do them anymore, and there's plenty of ways that we can. I know there are other ways to test certain drugs and different things without using animals, and if you're not willing to use it on a human, then maybe we shouldn't be using it on an animal either. The team's findings were published in the journal Current Biology. The reason we're interested in animal memory isn't only to understand animals, but rather to develop new models of memories that could match up with the types of memory impaired and diseases such as Alzheimer's, says lead author Jonathan Crystal. So this is basically what they did. They're trying to test episodic memory loss and see about the ability to recall past events. So to assess this, the team spent nearly a year working with 13 rats that they trained to memorize a list of up to 12 different colors. The rats were placed inside an enclosed platform featuring various odors and rewarded when they identified the fourth to last or second to last odor in the list. The researchers changed the number of odors in the list before each test to verify the odors were identified based upon their position in the list, not by scent alone, confirming the rats were using their ability to recall the entire list in order. So basically they're just testing the rats' sense of smell, their memory, and they showed that rats, they successfully completed their tasks roughly 87% of the time, strong evidence that they were using episodic memory replay. Additional experiments proved that the rats' recollections were long-lasting and resistant to interference from other memories, both signs of episodic memory. So again, I have reasons to kind of be against animal testing. I am a very big lover of rats, and that's, so obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I know in general that I just have problems with it, right? So this whole episode here, this little snippet of this video is about animals, right? So we're talking about, do animals have rights to be granted? Should court grant them rights? And what would that mean? How would our world look different if we treated animals like that? You can see here in my book and my first book, we wrote this essay called Recognizing Animal Consciousness on Your Path to Freedom. I'll leave that in the links. You can check that one out. And I also wrote another essay for my third book, Manifesto of the Free Humans, which was called Stewardship of the Earth, and it was all about the planet and animals and things like that. And you can also see this video right here, which is a couple of years old, called Arguments for and Against Animal Rights, if you want to know more about my opinions on that. But essentially, it comes down to what I was saying, that that basically, if elderly people and children are seen as a protected class and granted quote-unquote rights, or at the very least we don't beat them up, we don't harm them, then why not treat animals that way, right? And the other thing is, as it comes to property, because I believe in personal property, I believe in what some people call private property. I think it's better called personal property. The things that we possess, they're privately used by ourselves, but they're our personal items, right? And some people would consider an animal to be that. So your dog, whatever, your rat, these sort of things. So if you want to abuse them, then some people would say that's within your right? It's your private property that you have exclusive use of, and you can treat it how you like. It's just an object, not a living being. And I wrote in Manifesto of the Free Humans that if I witness somebody abusing an animal before me, and even if it's on their private property, right? Like say I'm living next to somebody and we have a fence dividing us, and on this side is their property and on this side is my land where I'm being a steward and I have animals, and I see them abusing their dog or animal of some type, and they're not trying to eat it to put it out of its misery and to eat it to survive. They're just like literally being abusive. I will intervene. You can call that violation of your private property if you believe, but I don't think animals are your property. So that's a whole nother story. But at the end of the day, That's what I believe. I think that animals should be protected in some way, but it should be definitely done in a voluntary manner. I don't think we should have government force in order to enact something like this. But yeah, I gotta find my rat. So let me know, what are your thoughts? Like, are chimpanzees animals? Are they humans? Should all animals be granted some status of rights? I mean, I don't even know if I believe in rights as a concept itself, because we only have the rights that we are able to defend, right? So some would say, hey, if an animal can't defend itself, if you can successfully kill it, then you have the right to that, that meat, that victory, whatever you want to say. I would say that all animals, human and otherwise, have a right to life and have a right to live freely and to enjoy the fruits of their being, of their experience. And that may look like different things for different people. So we'll have parts of the world where people revere animals and parts of the world where maybe people still continue to eat animals. But at the end of the day, the mass agriculture, factory farming, animal holocaust is despicable. It's disgusting. If you're eating meat and you're buying from fast food restaurants, or you're buying from any of these traditional farms, and even some would say the humane, free range farms, you really got to go watch the videos and see what's happening out there, see how these animals are being treated, because not only is that just atrocious, but you are absorbing that energy when you eat that meat. And if an animal has been abused, it's been starved and just lived this horrible life from start to short start to finish, then you're going to be absorbing that energy. So think about that. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, DTube, Instagram, Steep Shot, MeWe, Minds.com, and of course theconsciousresistance.com. If you want to keep up with what we're doing, you can find more videos here on our Facebook page and elsewhere. Thank you guys so much for your support. My name is Derrick Broze. Once again, go out there, do something good in the world. Think about what you eat and where it's coming from, and if your actions are creating more harm and violence in the world or bringing more love and compassion. Thank you guys so much for your time. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.